Thank you for joining us now. Again, let's get into our next conversation. The Federal Inland Revenue Service generated 5.5 trillion tax revenue for the nation in the first 6 months of 2023, the highest tax revenue collection ever recorded in the first half of a fiscal year in Nigeria. Speaking to members of the National Economic Council recently, the executive chairman of the agency, Mohammed Nami, said the impressive performance was due to an increase in voluntary tax compliance from individuals and businesses, as well as the automation of FIRS tax administration processes. The Federal Inland Revenue Service said it achieved over 100% of its mid-year target of 5.3 trillion naira for the first half of the year, indicating excellent performance. Yeah, for more insight, Iniobong Hussein, Head Research and Policy Advisory at Budget Foundation, joins us now. Thank you for your time. We appreciate you for coming on board.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, and thanks for having me.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe I should ask you this question. Talk to us about the performance of the revenue generating agency, Federal Inland Revenue Service, with regards to the fund they've been generating over time, or revenue we've been generating over the years compared to this year. What do you think changed?
Well, I think in recent times, we've seen significant improvement in non-oil tax revenue, as you would see with company income tax, VAT, custom revenues with the last regime. But we still have considerable challenge with raising, oil taxes, as you would see without oil revenue, and also revenue from the solid mineral sector. If you place what we've been able to generate from that sector vis-a-vis the potential of that sector, you see that there's still a lot the country, has to do in terms of reforms to make maximum gains from that particular sector. But the bright spot has been with non-oil revenue or non-oil taxes, as the case may be, are greatly mobilized by the FIRS. The situation is different, at the subnational level with the states. But I think as we go further into the conversation, we would explore some of the challenges and, possible ways states can mobilize their domestic revenues internally.
And so, what do you think? How do you think this will impact on the President Tinubu's revenue drive and economic agenda? Yes, we also understand that some of the plan or tax items in the Finance Act of 2023 have been reversed. We understand, of course, the 5% reversal for telecom services is there. But with this that we are seeing, this increment, this improved revenue generation that we're seeing, how do you think it will impact on his plan and going forward, especially with regards to driving his economic development?
On the part of the taxpayer, morale is a little bit low, especially if you situate this within, the two headwinds, the removal of the subsidy and the unification of the exchange rates, which had put upward pressure on the price of energy, price of food, coupled with the inflation we were already experiencing. So we think with regards to VAT, which is largely a consumption tax, and consumers rationalizing their expenditure, we expect that, the expectation in terms of the projections for VAT by the end of the year might be something that we might not be able to meet. Because like I said earlier, for consumption, people are rationalizing their expenditure. People are consuming less of non-essential commodities, vis-a-vis their disposable income. And as you rightly stated, for some of the projections they had, which had been captured under the Finance Act, to reduce the socio-economic effect on both consumers and small businesses, some of those had to be forgone in the interim to make it reduce the cost of doing business or the cost of living for the average consumer. And this obviously would have an effect on what government is able to generate as taxes by the end of the year. So it's a pretty difficult place to be in, as government, because on one end, your citizens are going through the cost of living crisis. Businesses are having to grapple with, a significant increase in the cost of energy. Wages have not generally increased for people, and so you expect a sort of shrink in terms of growth. We're not expecting the economy to grow, as we had projected, due to all of these factors I have stated earlier. And of course, this would have a direct impact on what government is able to raise as tax revenues from citizens, at the end of the day.
I love the fact that you said that perhaps consumption is likely to drop, but if you look at the resolution arrived at the NEC meeting last week, talking about the National Economic Council meeting, and one of the resolutions is that salary of workers will be increased. Do you think it will make any change or any difference in terms of spending and consumption going forward?
I mean, you would have to look at what proportion of citizens or the labor force within the state makes up, the civil service, as the case may be. So a lot of times when the conversations is narrowed or are narrowed to the civil service, I feel like we're not having a holistic look at, the entire population, both working and not working. In a lot of these states, if you look at the data on unemployment and underemployment, I mean, they are staggering. For some states, at the last count, right, if you add the unemployment, underemployment, almost, up to 70% of the working population, and that has not abated over time. Within the first 6 months of the year, looking at what happened with the Naira redesign policy, the fuel scarcity, and now the increase in the price of fuel at the pump and the unification of the exchange rate, lots of jobs have been lost over this period, further impoverishing people. So whilst, some of these attempts made by, the state governments to try to increase salaries of civil servants, are commendable, it doesn't address the core of the situation, and it doesn't capture the entirety of the population in these states.
Okay, so in a nutshell, so we can say, can we be right, or is it safe to say that much of the tax revenue generated by the Federal Inland Revenue Service in the first half of the year is not from VAT, it's from other services, non-oil services, isn't it?
No, if you look at the breakdown, you would have from VAT, from CIT, you would have from earmarked revenues from electronic transfer levies. So they would usually have the breakdown. So definitely not only from VAT. The company income tax actually even made up about 59% of what was generated if you look at the data for the entirety of 2022. And I don't think that trend would change if you look at the breakdown for the first 6 months of the year, by what has been released by the FIRS. But I really want the focus to actually be on the states, because, I mean, what is released by the FIRS, I mean, with VAT, is what the 3 tiers of government would often share.
Right.
But where the brunt of this socioeconomic downturn is felt is actually at the subnational level, the local governments and the states. And that's where, a lot of attention needs to be focused on to see how we can ameliorate the sufferings of Nigerians, at that level.